Welcome back to Tales of the Dark. If you've ever gone camping, if you've ever sat alone in the woods at night, if you've ever felt like something was watching you from just beyond the firelight, tonight's stories might make you think twice about ever going back. Because sometimes the forest doesn't just surround you, sometimes it notices you. This first story happened to me about 2 years ago during a solo camping trip in a national forest in Pennsylvania. I had done solo trips before, nothing crazy, just quiet weekends to get away from work. No signal, no people, just trees and silence. I always found it relaxing. That was the whole reason I picked that spot. It was remote, far enough that you wouldn't accidentally run into anyone. At least, that's what I thought. I got there late in the afternoon. The trailhead was empty. No cars, no footprints, just a narrow dirt path disappearing into the trees. I remember standing there for a second, adjusting my backpack, thinking how perfect it was. Too perfect, honestly, but I shrugged it off and started hiking. The trail went deeper than I expected. After about an hour, the trees got thicker, the light started fading earlier than it should have, and everything just felt quieter. Not peaceful quiet, heavy quiet. You know, that kind of silence where it feels like the forest is holding its breath. Yeah, that. Still, I kept going. Eventually, I found a small clearing. It wasn't marked or anything, but it looked like people had camped there before. Flattened grass, a few old fire marks. I figured it was as good a place as any. I set up my tent, gathered some wood, and got a small fire going just before the sun disappeared completely. For a while, everything felt normal again. The crackling fire, the cool air, the occasional chirp of insects in the distance. I sat there eating, just staring into the flames. That's when I heard it, footsteps, not loud, not running, just slow, deliberate crunch, pause, crunch. I froze. At first I told myself it was an animal, it had to be, but then the steps stopped, and I felt it, that unmistakable feeling. Like someone was standing just outside the edge of the firelight watching me. I didn't turn right away. I don't know why. Maybe I didn't want to confirm it, but eventually I looked. And there he was, a man standing between the trees, maybe 30 feet away. Just far enough that the firelight barely touched him. I couldn't see his face clearly, but I could tell he was looking directly at me. "Hey," I called out, trying to sound casual. "You okay?" He didn't answer. He just stood there, not moving, not reacting, just watching. Something about that immediately felt wrong. Not threatening, not aggressive, just wrong. I stood up slowly. "Are you camping out here?" I asked. That's when he moved, just one step forward, and then he spoke. "Are you alone?" The question hit me harder than I expected. There was something off about the way he said it, too flat, too calm. I hesitated for half a second, then lied. "No," I said, "my friends are on their way." The man didn't react right away. He just stood there like he was thinking, then he nodded slowly. And without another word, he turned and walked back into the trees, just like that. Gone. I stood there for a few seconds, staring into the darkness where he disappeared, trying to process what just happened. Part of me wanted to pack up right then and leave. But another part of me, the logical part, kept trying to explain it away. Maybe he was just another camper. Maybe he didn't want to talk. Maybe I was overreacting, so I stayed. That was my first mistake. I sat by the fire a little longer, but I couldn't relax anymore. Every little sound felt amplified. Every shadow felt deeper. Eventually, I put the fire out and got into my tent. I told myself I was just being paranoid, that I'd fall asleep and laugh about it in the morning, but I didn't fall asleep, not even close. Because about an hour later, I heard the footsteps again. Closer this time, much closer, right outside my tent. Slow, circling, crunch, pause, crunch. I held my breath, didn't move a muscle. The footsteps made a full circle around my tent. Then they stopped, right next to my head. There was a long silence, and then I heard it. Breathing, not loud, not exaggerated, just steady, like someone standing there, listening. I closed my eyes tightly, pretending to be asleep. Even though my entire body was shaking, I didn't know who it was. I didn't know if it was the same man, but one thing was clear. Whoever was out there knew exactly where I was, and they weren't leaving. The breathing stayed there for what felt like forever. And then the footsteps started again, moving away, slowly disappearing into the trees. I waited 1 minute, 2 minutes, 5, nothing, just silence. I almost let myself relax, almost, until the footsteps came back from a different direction, this time faster. And that's when I realized something that made my blood run cold. There wasn't just one set of footsteps anymore. There were at least 2, maybe more, moving around me, surrounding the tent. And in that moment, I understood something I wish I hadn't. I was never alone out there, and I hadn't been for a long time. I stayed completely still. Not just because I was scared, but because I knew moving would make it worse. When you're alone in the woods, you start to understand something very quickly. Noise travels differently out there. Every small movement, every shift of fabric, every breath, it all feels louder than it should. And whoever or whatever was outside my tent, they were listening. The footsteps didn't rush. That was the worst part. If they had been running or chaotic or aggressive, maybe I could have convinced myself it was just animals or something passing through. But this was controlled, slow, intentional. One set of steps stopped near the front of my tent. Another circled toward the back. Then silence. I could feel it, that pressure, that presence, like eyes locked onto me from both sides. I kept my breathing as steady as I could, trying to fake sleep, even though my heart was pounding so hard it felt like it was shaking the ground beneath me. Seconds stretched into minutes, minutes into something that didn't even feel like time anymore. And then, a hand pressed lightly against the fabric of the tent, right near my feet. I almost flinched, I almost reacted, but somehow I didn't. The pressure stayed there, just resting. Like whoever it was testing, feeling, making sure something was inside. Then it slowly dragged across the tent wall. Not scratching, not clawing, just sliding from one end to the other. I bit down hard on the inside of my cheek to stop myself from reacting. Then the hand disappeared, more silence, and then a whisper, so quiet I almost thought I imagined it. "He's in there." My blood went ice cold. That wasn't an animal, that wasn't wind, that wasn't anything natural. That was a voice, a human voice, and it wasn't alone. Another voice answered, lower, harder to hear. Wait for what? I felt my entire body tense. Every instinct I had was screaming at me to run, to burst out of the tent and sprint into the woods, but I knew how stupid that would be. I didn't know how many there were. I didn't know where they were standing. And I definitely didn't know what they wanted, so I stayed, frozen, listening. The footsteps started again, but this time they moved farther out, not leaving, just repositioning. Branches snapped in the distance, then another, then silence again. It felt like they were spreading out. Like they were surrounding not just the tent, but the entire clearing. I slowly reached for my phone, inch by inch, trying not to make the slightest sound. The screen lit up dimly in my hand. No signal, of course. I didn't even know why I checked. There was no one to call, no one close enough to hear anything. Out there, I was completely on my own. I lowered the brightness as much as possible and turned the screen off again. And that's when I heard something new. Footsteps, but not on leaves, closer, heavier. Right next to the tent again. Then a sudden, sharp tap on the fabric, right near my head. I nearly jumped out of my skin. Another tap, then another. Like someone testing where I was inside. I clenched my jaw. Don't move, don't react, don't let them know you're awake. Then the zipper, a faint metallic sound. My heart stopped. They were touching the zipper, not pulling it, not opening it, just feeling it, like they were deciding something. I couldn't breathe, I couldn't think. I could barely even exist in that moment. Then suddenly footsteps rushed off, fast. Not panicked, not chaotic, just quick, all of them moving away at the same time. I stayed frozen for a long time after that, waiting, listening, nothing, just the wind, the distant hum of the forest, and my own heartbeat slowly coming back down. I don't know how much time passed. It could have been 10 minutes, it could have been an hour, but eventually exhaustion hit me, not real sleep, more like my body forcing itself to shut down for a few seconds at a time. I drifted in and out, every sound snapping me awake again. Until finally, the darkness outside started to change. That faint grey light that comes just before sunrise began to creep through the thin fabric of the tent. Morning. I didn't wait. The second there was enough light to see shapes, I unzipped the tent and stepped out. And the first thing I noticed was the ground, footprints, everywhere, not animal tracks, not random, human, dozens of them circling the tent, crossing over each other, leading into the trees in multiple directions. My stomach dropped. There had been more than I thought, a lot more. I turned slowly, scanning the tree line, half expecting to see someone still standing there, watching, but there was nothing, just trees, just silence, just the empty clearing, like nothing had happened. I packed as fast as I could, didn't even bother organizing anything, just shoved everything into my bag and got ready to leave. But before I did, I noticed something near the fire pit, something that hadn't been there before, a small pile of stones stacked neatly. Right where I had been sitting the night before. I frowned, stepping closer, and then I saw it. Underneath the stones, a piece of fabric. I reached down slowly and pulled it free. It wasn't mine. It looked like part of a shirt, old, dirty, and tied around it was something even worse, a strip of rope, tightly knotted. My chest tightened. That wasn't random, that wasn't natural, that was placed there deliberately for me to find. I dropped it immediately, and that's when I heard it, a branch snapping, close, too close. I froze. Slowly turning toward the sound, the trees stood still, the light filtering through them barely strong enough to reveal anything, but something moved just for a second, a shape sliding behind a tree, watching, still there, even in daylight. And in that moment, I realized something even worse than what happened during the night. They never left. I didn't think, I didn't hesitate. The second I saw that movement in the trees, I grabbed my bag and started walking. Not running yet, just fast, controlled. Trying not to look like I was panicking, even though every instinct in my body was screaming at me to sprint. You hear it all the time, don't run in the woods unless you know exactly where you're going. It's easy to trip, easy to get lost, easy to make yourself an easier target. But the moment I stepped out of that clearing, I realized something was already wrong. The trail I came in on didn't look the same. At first I told myself it was just the lighting. Everything looks different in the morning, different shadows, different angles, but no, that wasn't it. The path felt off, the trees seemed closer together, the ground didn't slope the same way I remembered, and worst of all, there were no clear footprints leading out, not even mine. My stomach dropped. That shouldn't be possible. I had walked in the same direction the day before. There should have been some sign of it, disturbed leaves, broken twigs, something, but there was nothing, just untouched forest. I turned slowly, looking back toward the clearing. For a split second, I considered going back. Maybe I had just stepped off the trail by accident, but then I saw it again, that movement. Closer this time, between two trees, a figure standing still, watching me. I didn't wait. I started moving faster. This time I didn't care about staying quiet or calm. I just needed distance. The forest felt different now, heavier, like it was closing in around me. Branches brushed against my arms. Leaves crunched louder than they should have. Every step felt wrong. And then I heard it, footsteps behind me, not right on top of me, but not far either, matching my pace. I didn't turn around. I didn't want to see how close they were. Instead, I picked a direction and pushed forward. The ground started sloping downhill. Rocks under my boots made it harder to keep balance, but I kept going, faster. The footsteps behind me grew louder, and then another set from the side. I glanced to my right and caught a glimpse of someone moving parallel to me. Same distance, same speed. My chest tightened. They weren't chasing me, they were pacing me, herding me. I stopped. Just for a second, the footsteps stopped too, silence. Then a single step from behind, closer than before. I turned and saw him, the same man from the night before, standing maybe 20 feet away. This time I could see more of him. Dark clothes, dirty, worn. His face still mostly hidden under the shadow of a cap, but I could see his mouth. And he was smiling, not wide, not exaggerated, just enough, like he knew something I didn't. "Why are you leaving?" he asked. His voice was calm, almost casual, like we were having a normal conversation. I didn't answer. I couldn't. My throat felt dry, tight. "You said your friends were coming," he continued. I felt a cold wave run through my body. He remembered that, of course he did. I swallowed hard. "They're already here," I said quickly. The moment the words left my mouth, I knew it sounded weak. The man tilted his head slightly, then he chuckled, a low, quiet sound. "No," he said, and took a step closer. "They're not." My heart slammed against my chest. From the corner of my eye, I saw movement again. Another figure, to my left this time, then another, behind a tree ahead. They were surrounding me, slowly closing in. I took a step back, and then I ran. No hesitation this time, no strategy, no thinking, just ran. Branches whipped against my face. The ground shifted under my feet. I nearly slipped more than once, but I didn't stop. Behind me, the footsteps exploded into motion. Loud, fast, chasing, no more pretending, no more slow movements. They were coming after me. I pushed harder, my lungs burning. My legs screaming. I didn't know where I was going. I didn't care. I just needed to get out. The forest blurred around me, trees flashing past, shadows twisting in the corners of my vision. And then I saw something ahead, a break, the trees thinning out, light, actual light. Hope. I sprinted toward it. The ground leveled out, the air felt different. And suddenly I burst out onto a dirt road. I stumbled forward, nearly collapsing, then turned around. The forest stood still, silent, no movement, no figures, no footsteps, nothing, like they had never been there. I stood there gasping for air, trying to understand what just happened. Then I heard it, from deep inside the trees, a voice, the same voice, calm, quiet, almost amused. "You found the way out." My blood ran cold. I didn't wait. I turned and started walking down the road as fast as I could. I didn't look back, not once, because I knew if I did, they might still be standing there, watching, waiting for me to come back, and something told me they weren't done with me yet. I didn't stop walking, not when I hit the road, not when my breathing started to slow, not even when the forest behind me went completely silent again. I just kept moving. That dirt road stretched on longer than I remembered. Or maybe I just didn't remember it at all. I was sure I had parked somewhere close to the trailhead. It should have been a short walk, 10 minutes, maybe 15, but this road, it kept going. No signs, no markings, no other cars, just trees on both sides and that same heavy feeling pressing down on everything. After about 20 minutes, I finally saw something ahead. A vehicle parked off to the side of the road. My chest tightened instantly. It wasn't my car, it was an older truck, dark green, dirty. The windows were tinted just enough that I couldn't see clearly inside. I slowed down without meaning to. Every instinct in my body told me something wasn't right, but I kept walking. Maybe it belonged to someone else. Maybe it was just another camper. Maybe the driver's side door creaked open. I froze. The same man stepped out. The one from the woods. My heart dropped. He shouldn't have been there. There was no way he could have gotten ahead of me without me seeing or hearing anything. Unless he never left. Unless there were others. He leaned casually against the truck like he'd been waiting for me. "You're a lot faster than you look," he said. I didn't respond. I couldn't. My brain was trying to catch up to what was happening, trying to make sense of something that didn't make sense. He smiled again, that same small, controlled smile. "You took the long way out," he added. "The long way, what did that mean?" "There's an easier trail," he continued, gesturing vaguely toward the woods behind me. "Most people don't find it. Most people," that word stuck with me. Most people don't find it. I slowly took a step back. "I'm just leaving," I said, my voice barely steady. He nodded. "I know." Another step forward from him, and that's when I noticed something else. The truck, it wasn't empty. There was someone in the passenger seat, just a silhouette, still watching. My stomach twisted. "You should stay," the man said suddenly. The words hit me like a punch. "Stay," I repeated, almost without thinking. He nodded slowly. "It gets better once you understand it," he said. "Understand what?" I felt the ground shift under me, like the world itself was tilting in a direction I didn't want to follow. "I don't want to understand anything," I said, backing up another step. "I just want to leave." The man's expression didn't change, but his eyes did. They hardened. "Just slightly. You already saw too much," he said. My chest tightened. Behind him, the passenger door of the truck slowly opened. Another man stepped out, then another from the back. Three, at least three of them, all dressed similarly, dark clothes, worn, blending into the surroundings like they belonged there. And the way they stood, calm, patient, like they weren't worried about me getting away because they knew I couldn't. I turned and ran, again, this time down the road. My legs were already tired from earlier, but adrenaline forced them to move faster than they should have. Behind me, the truck door slammed, then footsteps, multiple, closing in. I didn't look back. I couldn't. The road curved slightly ahead, and for a second I thought I saw something else. Another vehicle parked farther down. My heart jumped. Please, please let that be someone normal. I sprinted harder, my vision narrowing, my lungs burning. And then I saw it clearly. A car, my car, right where I remembered leaving it. Relief hit me so hard it almost made me stumble. I rushed to it, fumbling with my keys, nearly dropping them in the process. Behind me, the footsteps were getting closer, too close. I yanked the door open, jumped inside and locked it immediately. Hands shaking, I jammed the key into the ignition and turned it. The engine roared to life. I didn't waste a second. I hit the gas and sped down the road. Only then, only when I was already moving, did I glance in the rearview mirror. And what I saw made my stomach drop all over again. They weren't chasing me. They weren't even on the road. They were standing at the edge of the trees, all of them watching perfectly still. Like they had stopped the moment I reached the car, like there was a line they would cross, or maybe couldn't. The man from before stood slightly ahead of the others, and even from that distance I could tell he was smiling. I drove faster, didn't slow down, didn't stop. Not until the forest finally started to thin out, not until I saw actual signs of civilization again. Houses, road signs. People, normal life. But even then, even when I told myself I was safe, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed, that something had followed me out of those woods, not physically but mentally, like a piece of that place was still with me. And no matter how far I drove, I couldn't leave it behind, because deep down I knew something else, something worse. Those men, they hadn't tried that hard to stop me, not really, and that could only mean one thing: they didn't need to, because they knew. I might come back. I didn't stop driving for nearly an hour, not because I needed to, but because I couldn't shake the feeling that if I slowed down, even for a second, something would catch up to me. The forest eventually gave way to small towns, gas stations, traffic lights. People walking on sidewalks, normal life, and yet none of it felt real. It was like I had stepped out of something that didn't belong in the same world. I pulled into a gas station just off the highway. Bright lights, cars coming and going, the low hum of conversation. It should have calmed me down, but it didn't. I parked near the entrance and just sat there for a moment, staring straight ahead. My hands were still shaking. My reflection in the rearview mirror looked off, pale, exhausted, like I hadn't slept in days. I finally stepped out of the car, trying to act normal, trying to convince myself everything was fine. Inside, I grabbed a bottle of water and stood at the counter. The cashier, a middle-aged guy, gave me a quick glance. "You okay?" he asked casually. I hesitated. For a second I thought about telling him everything, about the men, the woods, the night. But how do you even explain something like that without sounding insane? "Yeah," I said finally, "just a long drive." He nodded, not thinking twice about it. I paid, walked back outside and took a long drink of water. That's when I noticed something that made my stomach twist again. A truck, parked near the edge of the lot. Dark green. My heart skipped. It couldn't be the same one. It didn't make sense. I told myself that immediately. There are thousands of trucks like that, same color, same style, but this one, it was idling just like before, and the driver was sitting perfectly still, hands on the wheel, facing forward, not moving, not reacting to anything around him. I stared at it for a few seconds too long. Then the driver slowly turned his head directly toward me. I couldn't see his face clearly through the windshield, but I didn't need to. I knew. Something deep in my gut told me it was him, or someone like him. I got back into my car immediately, locked the doors, started the engine. The truck didn't move, it just stayed there, watching. I pulled out of the gas station and onto the road. And for a moment I thought that was it, that maybe it really was just coincidence. That maybe I was letting fear mess with my head. But then I checked my rearview mirror and saw headlights, the same truck pulling out behind me. My chest tightened. "No," I muttered under my breath. "No, no, no." I sped up slightly. The truck matched my speed. I changed lanes, so did it. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. This wasn't random. This wasn't coincidence. They were following me. I turned onto a different road. The truck followed. I took another turn, still there, always the same distance behind me, never getting closer, never falling back. Just there watching, I felt that same pressure again, the same feeling from the woods, like I was being studied, measured. I pulled into another gas station, busier this time, more cars, more people. The kind of place where someone would notice if something went wrong. I parked quickly and stepped out. The truck slowed as it approached. Then it didn't turn in. It just kept driving, passing right by, like it had never been following me at all. I stood there watching it disappear down the road. My heart was still racing. But something about that made it worse, because it wasn't aggressive. It wasn't obvious. It was controlled, like they knew exactly how far to push before pulling back. I stayed there for a while, long enough to convince myself it was over. Eventually, I got back in my car and continued driving. By the time I reached my apartment, it was already getting dark. I parked, grabbed my things and went inside, locked the door behind me. For the first time all day, I felt something close to safe. I took a shower, sat on the couch, turned on the TV. Normal, everything was normal again, or at least it looked that way, but that feeling never really left. That quiet sense that something wasn't right, that something was off, like the woods hadn't let go of me yet. I tried to ignore it, tried to distract myself, but around midnight I heard something that made my blood run cold. A soft sound from outside my apartment, footsteps, slow, deliberate, stopping right outside my door. I froze, every muscle in my body locked up, because I knew that sound. I had heard it before, out there, in the dark, circling, waiting, and now it was here. I didn't move, I didn't even breathe at first. The footsteps outside my apartment door stopped completely, like whoever was out there knew exactly where I was standing on the other side. Silence. That kind of silence that feels wrong, heavy, like the air itself is waiting. My heart was pounding so hard I was convinced they could hear it through the door. Then a soft knock, not loud, not aggressive, just deliberate, 3 slow taps, exactly like the ones from the motel. My stomach dropped instantly. That wasn't coincidence, that wasn't random, that was the same pattern, the same behavior. I stepped back slowly, trying to keep my weight from creaking the floor. Another knock, same rhythm. Whoever was out there wasn't trying to break in, not yet. They were testing, waiting. Seeing if I would react, I didn't answer, I didn't even go near the door. Then a voice, quiet, calm. Hey, my blood went ice cold. It wasn't loud enough for anyone else to hear, but it was clear enough for me. That same tone. That same controlled, almost casual way of speaking, the same voice from the woods. I backed up further into the apartment. No, I whispered to myself, no, this isn't real. But it was, because then the doorknob moved just slightly, a soft click as it turned halfway, then stopped. Like they were checking if it was locked. I had locked it. Deadbolt and chain. Still, that didn't stop the fear from rising in my chest. The knob slowly returned to its original position, then silence again. I grabbed my phone with shaking hands and dialed 911. The ringing felt too loud, too slow. Finally, the dispatcher picked up. 911, what's your emergency? There's someone outside my apartment, I whispered. They're trying the door. Are they attempting to force entry? Not yet, I said, but they were here before. I think they followed me. Even as I said it, I knew how it sounded, but I didn't care anymore. Stay on the line, the dispatcher said. Officers are on the way. I stayed as quiet as possible, backing into my bedroom and closing the door slowly. That's when I heard something worse. A faint sound from the side of the apartment, near the window. My head snapped toward it, a soft scrape like something brushing against the glass. No, I muttered, not again, not here. I crept toward the bedroom window slowly, every step feeling like it echoed. The curtains were closed, but I could see a shadow moving behind them. Someone was outside, standing right up against the glass. Then a finger, pressing lightly into the curtain, tracing along it. Slowly, I stumbled back. My entire body went cold. There was more than one of them, just like before. One at the door, one at the window, maybe more. I heard the front doorknob move again, this time harder, a sharp rattle, then a soft laugh, barely audible from the other side. They always lock it, the voice said quietly. My chest tightened. They had done this before. That thought hit harder than anything else. This wasn't new to them. I wasn't special. I was just next. The dispatcher's voice pulled me back. Officers are almost there. Stay inside. Do not open anything. I nodded instinctively, even though she couldn't see me. The footsteps outside shifted, then stopped. Silence again. And then the bedroom window shook slightly, not enough to break, just enough to test it. I backed away completely, pressing myself against the wall. I didn't know what they wanted, I didn't know why me, but I knew one thing for sure: they weren't done. And then in the distance, sirens, faint at first, then louder, approaching fast. The moment the sound reached the building, everything stopped. The movement, the footsteps, the pressure, gone, just like in the woods, just like at the motel. They didn't run loudly, they didn't panic, they just disappeared. Like they had never been there. The police arrived minutes later. I opened the door only when they told me to. 2 officers, flashlights out, scanning everything. They checked around the building, the windows, the parking lot, nothing, no one, no signs of forced entry, no witnesses, just silence. One of the officers looked at me and asked, "Are you sure someone was here?" I didn't even answer right away, because I already knew what he was thinking, what they always think. But then I pointed to the window, to the faint smudge on the glass, long, thin, like fingers had dragged across it. The officer leaned in. His expression changed just slightly. "Stay inside tonight," he said quietly, like he finally understood something wasn't right. But even after they left, even after the lights were gone, I couldn't shake the feeling that somewhere not too far away, they were still watching, waiting, learning, and sooner or later they would come back. I didn't sleep that night, not even for a second. I sat on the edge of my bed with all the lights on, staring at the door like it might move again at any moment. Every little sound in the apartment made my body tense. The refrigerator humming, pipes shifting in the walls, a car passing outside. None of it felt normal anymore. Because once you felt that kind of presence, that kind of attention, you don't just forget it. You start noticing everything. Around 3:00 a.m. I got up and checked every lock again. Door, windows, closet, bathroom, all secure, but that didn't help, because the fear wasn't about them getting in anymore. It was about them already knowing how, and choosing not to. That's what made it worse. They weren't rushing, they weren't desperate, they were patient, like hunters, and I was just something they had marked. At some point I found myself standing by the window again, not because I wanted to, but because something in me needed to know, needed to check. I moved the curtain just slightly, just enough to see outside. The parking lot was empty, quiet, still, no people, no movement, just a single streetlight flickering near the edge of the lot. I stared at it for a few seconds, and then it flickered again, once, twice, then steadied. And that's when I saw it, a shape, standing just outside the reach of the light, too far to see clearly, but close enough to know it was a person. My breath caught in my throat. They weren't moving, just standing there, facing my apartment, watching. I froze, didn't blink, didn't breathe, and then slowly, the figure raised an arm and pointed directly at me. I stumbled back, nearly falling over. By the time I forced myself to look again, they were gone, just empty darkness, like nothing had ever been there. I didn't go back to the window after that. Morning couldn't come fast enough. As soon as the sun came up, I packed a bag, didn't overthink it, didn't hesitate. I left. I drove straight to a friend's place across town, didn't tell anyone exactly why. Just said I needed a few days away. But even there, even in a completely different place, that feeling didn't leave, because it wasn't about the location anymore. It was about me. A couple days later, I went back to my apartment during the afternoon to grab more of my things. I told myself it was safe, daylight, people around, nothing would happen. But the moment I stepped inside, I knew something was wrong. The air felt different, like someone had been there. I walked slowly through the living room. Everything looked normal, nothing out of place, until I got to the bedroom. That's where I saw it, on the wall, right next to the bed. Something written, not with paint, not with marker, something darker, thin lines, uneven, like it had been scratched in, over and over again. I stepped closer, and my stomach dropped because I recognized it immediately. It was the same shape, the same pattern as the stones from the campsite, arranged differently but still intentional, still a message, and underneath it, words. Barely legible but clear enough. "You left." My chest tightened. They had been inside, not trying to break in, not testing anymore. They had already done it. At some point, somehow, while I was gone, or worse, while I was there, I didn't stay. I grabbed what I could and left everything else behind. I moved out that same week. Didn't go back, didn't tell the landlord anything, I just left. But here's the part that still keeps me awake at night. A few days after I moved, I got something in the mail. No return address, just a plain envelope. Inside, a single photograph, printed, grainy, taken from a distance, but clear enough it was me standing at my campsite, the first night by the fire, completely unaware. And in the background, barely visible between the trees, were shapes, multiple, watching, waiting. And at the bottom of the photo, written in that same uneven handwriting, "You found the way out." Then underneath it, "Next time, don't." I haven't gone back to the woods since. I don't go camping anymore. I don't stay in places where I feel isolated. But none of that really matters, because sometimes late at night I still hear it. Footsteps, slow, deliberate, stopping just outside, like they're still there, still waiting, still watching. And I don't think they ever lost track of me. I think they just let me leave. Because they know something I don't, that sooner or later I might come back, and next time I might not find the way out. If you are new here, subscribe to Tales of the Dark, where every story gives you a nightmare.